Good morning, everyone. 22 years of being upstaged by my wife. A strange thing happened this week. I was taking the dog for a walk, and I stumbled across a secret snowman graveyard. I suppose it could have been a field of carrots, but I don't know. Proverbs. We're on Proverbs, the final instalment. Last time we looked at the sayings of the wise, followed by the further sayings of the wise, and then that was followed by chapters 25 to 29, more Proverbs of Solomon. And this morning we're looking at the two final chapters, 30. It gets no better now, doesn't it? I've done the best. Darn! The sayings of Agar and the sayings of King Lemuel. So first, Agar. Nothing much is known about Agar, other than that which Proverbs tells us from 30 verse 1. The sayings of Agar, son of Jacob, an oracle. So his dad's name was Jacob. And these sayings are an oracle. Oracle's a weird word, isn't it? We don't really use it anymore. It's a word meaning kind of infallible, prophetic, authoritative. In other words, it's kind of a saying of God. It's of God, a message from God. So, in other words, verse 1 is saying, this is going to be good. Listen up, this is going to be good. Then we get to verses 2 and 3. I am the most ignorant of men. I don't have any understanding. I've not learned wisdom, and I know little of God. What? What are we to do? What are we to do with this chapter? Do we discount it? He knows nothing. But we have this confidence, don't we? We have this confidence that our Bibles are inspired by God. There's a reasons for Agar's advice. And there's a reason it follows on from Solomon's advice. And far from being ignorant, I think God has given Agar this incredible insight. And I can be fairly confident that Agar spent his life pondering how the world works and what God is like. And his conclusion is, I know so little. The more I know, the more I realize how little I know. And I think a sign of growing wisdom is just that, the more we learn, the more we understand, the more we realize we don't know. It's that developing humility. The closer your relationship to God, the more you realize how much more there is to know, how much little we already know, how big the gulf is between us and God. And then in verses 4 to 6, Agar shows that despite his feeling that he knows so little of God, God is actively at work in his life. And he asks this question, who has gone up to heaven and come down? Who controls the wind and the sea, set boundaries for the earth? What is the name of God's Son? Tell me if you know. Anyone? Jesus. Oh! Sunday school week 1. Jesus. Agar claims not to know anything of God. And yet here he is 1,000 years before Jesus, anticipating Jesus' arrival from heaven, God's Son from heaven. And it was Hannah's talk back before COVID, BC. Is that terrible to say? That encouraged me to look at Proverbs. She spoke about Proverbs 3, 5 and 6, which Gemma mentioned this morning. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him. And I think this is the wisdom of Agar, isn't it? Wisdom's not about having more and more head knowledge. It's that engaging with God in the everyday, in our everyday lives. And then as we do so, you realize that there's more going on here than I realize. There's much more going on than I can understand. And like Agar, we're not the one with all the answers. And it throws us back onto God. And increasingly we have to rely on God. And that's true wisdom. It's that being thrown back. I need to rely on God. I need to look to God and understand what's going on. And also, like Hagar, as we grow in wisdom, we're left with possibly yet more questions. What is his name? And I think for us, having more questions than answers is not necessarily a bad thing. And it could well be a sign of God's at work in our lives, prompting you back to ask him, to seek him. So don't panic. Verses 7 to 9. 2 things Hagar wants from God. Verse 8, he wants protection from falsehood and lies. Hagar wants only truth. God, talking about himself in Isaiah, says, I, the Lord, speak the truth. I declare what's right. In the Gospel of John, Jesus describes himself as the truth, the way, the truth, and the life. And he says, I tell you the truth 28 times. And of the devil, Jesus says, there is no truth in him. So truth is important to God. It's important to Hagar. And I wonder how important is truth to us? And I think it would be fair to say Hagar would be uncomfortable in our culture, wouldn't it? Truth is no longer our guide, I don't think. I think today it's all about relativism. Lots of people feel this way, so we'll change public policy to accommodate that. And how we feel is the basis of what is true, not what is actually true. And I got a quote from Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey said, follow your feelings. If it feels right, move forward. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. And it's a lovely philosophy, isn't it? It's nice. And yet the Bible says that we're all sinful, that we have a preference for falsehood. And so I guess the truth will not always feel comfortable and nice. So we need to make a decision. Do we follow Hagar or do we follow Oprah? It's your choice. So two things Hagar wants. He wants protection from falsehood, and then 8 and 9, he wants, give me only my daily bread. And that's a familiar phrase, isn't it? It points us back to the olden days. It points us back to the Israelites in the desert who were told to collect just enough manna for that day, no more, just enough for that day. And it points forward to Jesus teaching his disciples to pray, give us this day our daily bread. So the second thing that Hagar wants is he wants just enough. Too much of anything, and then you don't have to rely on God anymore. Too much of anything, and you become self-reliant. You have no need of God. It's the camels and eyes of needles syndrome. But equally, Hagar says too little, and there's a danger in desperation. You might do something that dishonors God. You might steal, lie, cheat. And I can't be sure, but for us, I guess the first is the risk for us, isn't it? Having too much. But I think it could be true to say as well that we also have a spiritual role to play in the lives of others, those with too little. We could perhaps be missionaries by lifting people out of poverty, putting them in a better place so that they can respond to God more easily by giving money or sponsoring someone or something. So just by giving money, we can do a spiritual work. Chapter 31, the sayings of King Lemuel. Who was King Lemuel? Well, it was believed that Hagar and Lemuel were contemporaries. They both lived about the same time. They're both from Massa in northern Arabia, but you don't need to know that. And King Lemuel attributes his wisdom to the teachings of his mother. What does she say to King Lemuel? 2-7. O my son, do not spend your strength on wine and women. My initial thought was she's missed out watching sport on TV. This is not perhaps advice that a father would feel comfortable bringing, is it? We need the wisdom of mothers. And King Lemuel was from a royal household. We don't know how big his kingdom was, but he was in the king business. And his mother's advice to him, recorded for us in the Bible, was don't get caught up in the selfish pleasures of court life, of wives and feastings. 1 Kings 10:21 says of Solomon, all King Solomon's goblets were made from gold, as were all the household articles in the palace of the forest of Lebanon. The king had a fleet of ships. Every 3 years it returned carrying gold, silver, ivory, apes and baboons. And then 1 Kings 11:3, Solomon had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. And I don't know how the book of Proverbs was put together, but Solomon was the main instigator, wasn't he? And it was the advice from Agar and Lemuel. Was that added, do we think? Do we added by Solomon, or was it added by someone else? I don't know. But Solomon, the wisest man of his time, was undone by the pleasures of court. If only he had Lemuel's mother to advise him. Don't spend your strength on the pleasures of court, but 8 and 9. Speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and the needy. So avoid the pleasures and the distractions of court life to focus on the needs of the needy. Now, none of us, as far as I know, I'm just looking around, maybe Penny, I don't know. So none of us are of royal birth, I don't think. Not Penny, no, Penny's denied it. None of us are royal birth. But I think Lemuel's mother's advice has some value for us too. The danger of court life is that it's inward focused. Once you've got one golden goblet, you need another one for when that one's in the dishwasher. And then one day you wake up and you realize that all your stuff is made of gold. And you think, what I really need are some apes and baboons. And then you know you've really lost your focus, don't you? And Lemuel's mother says, keep your focus on those with little, those in need. That's the way to maintain your focus. And Solomon's easy to poke fun at because he's so extreme, but the principle, I guess, holds true. Where's my focus? Is my focus on my life, on my domain, on my little kingdom? Or is it out there with the poor and needy? Where's my focus in life? Is it inwards or is it outwards? I'm sorry if you do have an ape or a baboon. It's not necessarily a sign of anything bad. And finally, epilogue, the wife of noble character. 31:10, a wife of noble character who can find? Me, I found her. You got the next picture? Do you know, I've been dreading this passage for weeks because I'm going to upset my wife, I'm sure. I'm going to upset other wives. I'm going to upset husbands. I'm going to upset everyone. But I've been dreading it. And I think this passage is one of those Marmite passages, isn't it? Can we go back again, Heather? Some of us find it inspiring, uplifting, ennobling. Some of us find it nauseating, don't we? For myself, I read a verse like 31:15. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household. Sorry, where was I? And I think it's great that this description of a noble wife is the conclusion of Proverbs. Lots of Solomon's advice is all about kings, sons, men, basically. And this is about a woman who embodies the wisdom of the last 30 chapters. She spent her life applying the lessons of Proverbs to her daily life, to her situation as the head of a household. And I wondered, is Lemuel describing an actual person, or is he describing an amalgamation of lots of women that he knows? Is he perhaps describing his mother in glowing terms? Or perhaps this is Lemuel's mother's prescription for the wife that he needs Lemuel, you need to find this woman and marry her. But what amazing qualities this woman has. She's a wife and a mother. She brings food from afar to feed the family. She's practical, making clothes and furnishings, enough for the family, some to sell to raise money. She manages the household, the property. She gardens. She's strong, vigorous, wise, industrious, tireless, generous to the poor and needy. And interesting, there's no mention of what she looks like, is there? But I don't think it's a checklist for us. I don't think it's a checklist for us to compare, thank goodness, to compare ourselves against. But I think it's a word picture. It's someone who spent their lives applying the wisdom of Proverbs to their setting. A wife running a large household. And there's not much theology in Proverbs. There's not much about, this is what God is like. But it's about what a God-shaped life looks like. And the challenge of the wife of noble character is not so much perhaps to be like her, but to work out what a God-shaped life would look like in our own settings. Whatever that might be, whether you're single or married or divorced or separated, whether you're a carpenter, a gardener, a dentist, a carer, a teacher, an IT specialist. What does a God-shaped life look like in those settings? So I don't think it's a checklist, but there are definite principles that we can draw on. So she's industrious. She gets up while it's dark, and her lamp doesn't go out at night. She makes the most of the time she has. She's creative. She's focused on others. She's concerned for the poor and the needy. She leads a considered life. She's thought about and she's worked at applying that wisdom to the different areas of her life. And verse 30, she fears the Lord. Her lifestyle is driven by a reverence for God. So what will our epilogue look like when it comes to be written? The strange, some might say handsome dentist of noble character. Some might not say that. What will our epilogue be? So in summary, the wisdom of Agar and Lemuel. It's about reliance on God, pursue the truth, a moderate lifestyle, concern for the poor. And I can't help but feel that Agar and Lemuel follow on from Solomon for a reason. Solomon, the wisest man of his day, in his later life is distracted by court life. Is no more reliance on God, no more pursuit of truth, no more moderate lifestyle, no more concern for the poor, just apes and baboons. And if the great Solomon can get distracted, what hope is there for us? What hope is there for me? What hope, what chance do you and I have of building that God-shaped life? Unless there's another way. Unless there's some other way. And I think Agar senses it. What's the name of the son who's gone up to heaven and came down? And Jesus lived the ultimate life, didn't he? The ultimate God-shaped life, because he was both God and man. And he says to us, follow me, do what I did. And more than that, Jesus gave up in his life on the cross so that our sins could be washed away. Oh, happy day. So that God could make his home in our hearts. So what the great Solomon could not do in his own strength, we've got the opportunity to do because Jesus goes before us to show us the way. And the Holy Spirit goes with us to strengthen and guide us. And in Proverbs, Solomon shows us that we need to change our lives. And he shows us ways in which we can change our lives. But more than that, he hints that the only real way that change can happen, the only real way that change is possible, that relationship with Jesus. Shall I pray? And then, do you want to say anything else, please?
I'll just look up announcements.
Well, Lord, thank you for your word. Thank you that that you've given us the way to follow you through Jesus' death on the cross, that we have that access to you, to know you and to follow you and to love you and to live a life that honours you. And pray for each of us this week that we could just be free in that and know your prompting, your guidance. Amen.